Yo, we just people from the north side. Once the Timmy's hit the shore fine. Winter ready on the full ties. Heavy traffic during 4-5. Gotta hustle on your own time. Color people every port side. We just people from the north side.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Straight Talk Wrestling. As always, I'm your host, your boy, George Mackay, and I got a good one. I got a Montreal native, Pointe Claire, Quebec, actually, is where she was born and raised. I hope I said that correctly, but sometimes my French is not the best, you know what I mean? Much like a lot of people's English from there is not the best. Like, we all can't be so eloquently spoken like a speedball Mike Bailey. But regardless of the fact, and I mentioned Mike Bailey because he trained her, help me welcome the Queen Cobra, or the Cobra Queen, Katrina Creed, to Straight Talk Wrestling. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for the intro. I'm doing super awesome. How are you?
I'm great. I'm going to be chopping it up with, I love getting talent as they're, a couple years in, which you are. You debuted 2022, and here we are going on to your third year. So congratulations for that, because this
Thank you.
crazy wild world of pro wrestling is not for the faint at heart. So if you made it 3 years, my dear, you are in it for the long haul.
Yeah, you are definitely right. Wrestling, as you know, as people have heard, and as I've experienced myself, as you have as well, it's something, let me tell you.
It's something is the best way to put it for sure. Now trained at IWS DOJO, trained by Mike Bailey and a couple other great performers over there. What is it that drew you to pro wrestling? I'm not going to be cliche and ask you like who your favorite wrestler is and stuff like that, because I've done my research, and you've actually said on the Love Wrestling interview that you don't really have a favorite. You just are a student of the game. You like to appreciate everyone for what they are and what they bring to the table at that given moment in time, which I think is such an incredible, great answer for somebody who's only been in the business for 3 years. So forget asking favorites, forget asking all that, forget asking influences. What was the one thing that made you fall in love with professional wrestling?
I think I'd say like most people, it was when I was a child, that's really when I first started getting into wrestling. I've always been, if you couldn't tell, just by, my gimmick and my gear and the way I present myself and just how I dress in day-to-day life. I'm attracted to darker, more gothic things. And as a kid, from the get-go, I always was, even that young. And I don't know if it was the very first time that I watched wrestling, but my very first memory of watching wrestling was with The Undertaker. And I just remember seeing him on the screen and just thinking he looked so cool. And I just love the vibe and everything. It was a bit messed up because he was like sacrificing Stephanie McMahon at that point, which like I don't know about like my priorities and my life view and all that at that point, or worldview, why I was attracted to that of all things. But it spoke to me. And that was the very first thing that I remember, like, as my first memory of wrestling. And I was pretty much hooked after that. I loved it. Like, I loved it for very much different reasons as a kid than I do now, especially now that I'm older and I'm actually involved in the business. It's like very different reasons. But at the time, I couldn't even tell you what I liked about it so much when I was a kid. I think I just liked kind of rough and tumble play. I had two older brothers, right? I tend to be a bit more of a tomboy when I was younger and sporty. So I just liked that type of physicality, which I still do now. So that definitely spoke to me. I just liked kind of fast-paced action and stuff like that. And just larger than life characters, these cool people doing these awesome moves. Like as a kid, I think that's probably what attracted me the most. That and just these, great characters for sure.
I love that. I absolutely love it. I think that is so cool. That again, when you mentioned dark and gothic, I'm like, okay, she's totally going to tell me something about the Undertaker, and you hit it, nail in the coffin. Now, mind you, I did not expect you to say the sacrificing of Stephanie McMahon, but hey, you know what? I get it. The Undertaker was just all kinds of cool. The one thing I remember from that storyline specifically is when he had her in the back of the limo, like the 2 Raws before the Raw he kidnapped her, and he's like, "Where to, Stephanie?" And you're like, "Damn, I don't ever want to be in a limo with you, bro," because I would crap myself. I would crap my pants, 100%.
No, for sure. Easily.
So I look at you, and the first time I discovered you was actually this past summer in Toronto. You were actually at the CNE. You worked a couple
Yes.
of CNE shows with CCW. Mike Clark's a good friend of the show, and I actually helped him promote some of those shows out there. Not like he needed my help because it sells itself. But how cool is it to have the experience of wrestling at the CNE, which is like one of the oldest attractions in all of Canada, and the fact that pro wrestling had been there, the history of pro wrestling and the CNE go hand in hand, and it had stopped for a little bit, but now we're at the resurgence, and you're there for like the first full summer of pro wrestling. You had a couple great dates. You came out, you looked great, the gimmick was fun. You're wrestling in front of people who literally some love wrestling, some don't, some have never seen it, some are just looking to sit down and rest for 5 minutes. And you're there putting on, 3, 4 shows a day. What was that whole experience like? Because, like I said, the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition, and wrestling, a long history. And now, like I said, it stopped for a bit and now it's resurging. And you were literally there for the first year full time. How was that?
It was honestly, it was such an amazing experience. It was amazing, but it was grueling simultaneously, for different reasons. And I'll go into that, but once I'm done, you're going to have to tell me about this history because I had no idea that there was a history between wrestling and the CNE like prior to us. But yeah, this was my first time. Like I had done the year prior with Mike Clark and CCW, but it was just for a weekend at that point. They liked the product enough to like renew it for this year, which was the whole CNE, the full 2 weeks and a bit. And yeah, like obviously it's such an amazing opportunity to get that. Mike Clark has treated me so well. He's helped me out a lot. He's honestly one of my favorite people in the business because he's helped me out a bunch and he's always treated me well, paid me well. It's never been any bullshit with him. So I really, really appreciate him. And I'm very happy to have him as someone who's in my corner. And I just felt really grateful that he extended that opportunity for me. So to be a part of something that, as you mentioned, is something that's really big in Canada, specifically in Toronto, was awesome. Any opportunity like that, I'm always just very like grateful because I know it's not super easy to come by. So just for that, it had a lot of significance to me. And to be able to wrestle that much in that amount of time is also something that I thought was really cool to be able to do. And I was super excited going into it just because the main reason I wanted to was pay is obviously decent, but like I really am someone that's passionate about wrestling and I saw it as a great opportunity to like practice because every show is a practice, right? It's a live show, but you are essentially practicing every time you do a show. So I was getting a lot of practice and seeing what worked and what didn't, what resonated and what didn't. So I was so excited to be able to do that. And that was awesome. And I feel like it really did change me as a performer, which is what I was going for. I feel like it ramped up my intensity. It gave me a better idea of what works and what doesn't in certain places. So it really helped me in the way that I wanted it to, which was awesome. It was grueling though, because I think I overestimated my abilities a bit. Thinking too, because essentially most wrestlers that were there, I think they did 2 matches a day, which was the case for me. But the thing is I was there for pretty much the whole time, more or less, like at least 2 weeks and a bit. So I think for CCW specifically, I wrestled, I think it was like 28 matches in 2 weeks, which, some wrestlers do that in a year. Some wrestlers who are considered like busy on the busier end on the indies will maybe do 50 or 60 a year. There's some who do like 100 or more, but like most people who are considered like busy and have a full schedule do 50 or 60 a year. So to do about half of that in 2 weeks, it was very intensive and it was super rough on the body. I remember by the 10th match, which was, I guess, day 5, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm going to. I'll figure something out. But it was really like taxing, physically and mentally more than I had given it credit for. And so it humbled me very quickly in that sense, for sure.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, you said it humbled you quickly because you're right. 50 matches in a year is a great busy year for an independent wrestler. And then, like you said, 100 is crazy ridiculous. But to wrestle 30 in the short span of 2.5 weeks, might have even been less than that. You're talking, 8 minutes, 8 minutes at a time, 20 minutes a day. This is physical. I mean, 20 minutes, people are 20 minutes a day. That's easy. Yeah, you try to wrestle for 20 minutes a day. Okay,
It's
you try to
tough.
wrestle two shows. I couldn't do it. I've been in a ring and I've tried to run the ropes. After running the ropes first time, I was like, nope, it's not for me. I can't do it. I love pro wrestling. I love talking about pro wrestling. I like talking to pro wrestlers. I love commentating, but I'll never step foot in that ring. And if I do step foot in that ring, I would be like the guy that hits someone with a kendo stick and then rolls out underneath. And I don't even think I
Which
could roll out properly. I don't think I could roll out properly, to be honest with you. It's something special when you can get an opportunity like that, like you said. And of course, with that came opportunities because I did also catch you at Demand Lucha, which was great. And then I'm watching more of you, and I'm like, you know what? I've got to do my own research. So that's the great thing about independent wrestling television. That's the great thing about YouTube. That's the great thing about everything is that we can find stuff. Finding your new favorites or finding somebody that you're intrigued by is a lot easier nowadays, especially on social media. You just go to cat.creed at social on Instagram, boom. I got highlights, I got clips, I got everything I needed to know about your career for the past 3 years, or 2.5 going into 3 years now. And two of my favorite matches, I actually went back and watched entirety, was at the IWS and GCW show. That
Okay.
was a great match. You were originally the champ, and you went up against Masha Slamovich, who was arguably
Yes.
one of the most dangerous women, and you went up against Kristara, who I've also seen as well. She is absolutely fantastic. So you're the
Yes.
champ. You're walking into IWS's house, and you look across the ring, and you see somebody who is as unhinged and psychotic as they come, with GC Masha Slamovich, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna earn this paycheck today. And you did. You guys lit it up. The three of you. It was an incredible match. Unfortunately, you did lose the title, but it was still a great match. Talk to me about being in the ring with arguably one of the most dangerous women in pro wrestling right now at this time. I'm not talking forever. I'm talking about right now. Masha Slamovich is next level. What she's done at TNA, what she's done before TNA, after TNA. I was honored to have her on the show a couple times before she got her TNA contract, and then it's a little more difficult to get a hold of her at that point. But you're mixing it up with arguably a staple of GCW, at least within the last 4 to 5 years. And she comes in, she rocks you, she takes the title. But at the end of the day, you still win because you put on one hell of a show. Talk to me about that match. Talk to me about that moment.
Thank you. I mean, thank you so much. I really appreciate your words and they do mean a lot. I'm glad you enjoyed the match. It was definitely a huge highlight for me. I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now because it was really an important moment in my career. And Masha is someone that prior to me meeting her, I really looked up to her as a worker. I try to be really intense in the ring, and she obviously has an incredible intensity. So she's someone that I respect a lot. She's someone that I wouldn't necessarily say that I model myself after, but I definitely take a lot of inspiration from her presence in the ring and her intensity and her no bullshit attitude that she just gives off by standing there. You know what I mean? She just like it emanates off her. So she's someone I respected and looked up to for a long time in the business since I started as a wrestler and started looking at the independents. And then to be able to have a match with her, it was beyond my wildest dreams. It's something that I wanted to do. She was like one of my dream matchups, like easily top 5, maybe top 2 or 3 on the independents, maybe even number 1, to be honest. And I thought, maybe I'd be lucky enough to get the opportunity down the line. I wasn't expecting something so quick. So when I got that opportunity, I jumped at it. And even though I knew like I was going to lose, like I didn't even care because I'm just like, I get to share the ring with Masha and I get to be in the ring with her and just planning the match with her. Like she has such a wealth of knowledge and you can tell just by how she approaches structuring a match, the ideas that she has and everything, which I really appreciated. I was able to just, to be next to someone who's so knowledgeable. Like I found it helped me. Like unconsciously just being able to learn from her in that way. So I was super grateful for that. And then like, man, just being in the ring with her too, like people know she has that intensity and she has that star power, but like being in the ring with her, something else, man. I've never been in the ring with someone like that before, like before or after. And I mean, I've had a short career, right? But I've still been in the ring or still wrestled like quite a few names. And she's just on a different level. I've never been in the ring with someone like her. She just like I don't know how to explain it, man, but it's like she's just this amazing she's this fucking rock star, like seriously. And I felt it when I was in the ring with her and just doing everything with her. Like I was like, holy fuck, it doesn't happen too often that I meet people that like have a higher intensity than me or out intense me or whatever, but she did by far, and it's I felt like I was out of my league, but again, humbling. And it made me realize like, man, I need to like get trained by her or something. So because of that match, like I swear, because of that match, like I have a remote job, like as my shoot job. I'm actually going to get trained by Masha like next month. And I'm going to be in the States for 2 months and I'm going to like do bookings there and get trained by her because I'm like, I just need to have more experiences with this person and get trained by her and just like kind of feed off her some more because I felt like it helped me grow that much as a performer. And then obviously Christara being in there is awesome. She's one of my best friends in the business. As you mentioned, she's fantastic and she's doing amazing. So to share that experience with her too just made it that much better, honestly. Oh, I think he might be muted.
Yeah, there we go. It's so weird. I don't know why it does that.
Yeah, all good.
All right. Added point, George, for me. All right. So, and I think you're right. Having those moments is huge. It's incredible.
Mhm.
Then you having them so early on in your career, it's crazy. It is crazy to be already in your dream match. But then also, I mean, I look at your trajectory and you've had a lot of big moments, a lot of high pressure situations, and you're only, like I said, 2 going in 3 years in. I mean, you took the title off Lufisto, who is literally one of the legends of Canadian wrestling. You're also from, Montreal, which is for a while there was a resurgence of imports from Ohio. There was something with the water in Cleveland and Ohio. They were just producing wrestlers like crazy. And then you go to Montreal and you're talking about literally who they produced in the last 15 years, but who they produced in the last 50 years. Montreal has a ridiculous, crazy amount of talented people that come out of there. I mean, arguably my doppelganger, Kevin Owens. I say that because a lot of people say I look like him. If I could grow more of a beard, I would, but I can't. I also can't move around the ring like him at all.
Yeah, he's agile as heck.
Yeah, I would also say Sami Zayn, but again, I don't have the orange hair, so I can't maneuver around the ring like he can either. But I look at those guys, I also look at the history of the Jacques Rougeaus, the Dino Bravos, coming out of Montreal, training in Montreal with somebody, again, like Speedball Mike Bailey. What is it? That's got to be a pressure situation itself because in Montreal, you consistently have to prove yourself because there is someone in the wings that will be ready and willing to take your spot at any given turn. So not only do you have to show and prove, do you have to get it and get it quickly, but you also have to consistently elevate. And like I said,
Yes.
you're 3 years in. But again, coming out of Montreal, when somebody hears that you're a wrestler from Montreal, that comes with a lot of pressure behind it. A lot of pressure if you're wrestling from Quebec. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's a very interesting point and something I'd never considered before. Obviously, oh, sorry, my cat just is knocking the stand, but sorry about that.
Yeah, I got a dog somewhere that's floating around here, and she just sleeps all the day. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
If it's wobbling, it's her. But yeah, that's a very interesting point and something I never considered before. Obviously, I'm aware that like Montreal obviously has an amazing history when it comes to wrestling, a very rich one. And there's so many people that have come out of our scene, like you said, more recently, but just in general over the past little while. And although I was aware of that, I guess when you're in the city, you don't realize how other people might be like seeing it in that sense. But you are absolutely right in the sense that there's a lot of great talent that have come out of Montreal that are currently in Montreal. Even in the women's division, we have like a lot of really good talent as like for women wrestlers around here. And in that sense, you're right. It's something that I never considered when I got into wrestling. But wrestling is very mentally taxing for those reasons that you mentioned. It's only something that kind of dawned on me more recently when I started reflecting over my last year, because I had for a second year, like I did quite a bit and I didn't, like it didn't fully register because I was just like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. Like I wasn't even thinking. I'm like, this is a cool opportunity. Okay, I gotta do it. It's done. Next week I got this. Okay. Like it was just, that's all that last year was. And when I took like 2 weeks off, like during the Christmas break, and I really thought about what I did, it dawned on me how much I did. And it dawned on me how stressed I was throughout that time. Now that I had this period of like rest and reflection, and I wasn't in that like go, 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 go mindset the whole time, I kind of realized how stressed I was over the past year. And I realized why. It's because I've had a lot of really good opportunities. I'm so, so thankful that there are a lot of people that trusted me to be put in those positions and to give me those opportunities. Like I really appreciate that. And there's a lot of people who took chances on me. And it really means a lot. But it's A shit ton of pressure. It's a shit ton of pressure that I didn't realize because I was just going through it. But it was so many different moments throughout this past year where I constantly had to prove myself because there's an expectation of me. Like as the year went on, there was an expectation of me, or that's what I felt by being put into those positions. And so I kept having to like, do the best that I could with what I had. And it was an enormous amount of pressure. And simultaneously, as you mentioned, you always have to be on top. You have to find a way to elevate yourself, to adapt to what's going on. And we have an amazing pool of women wrestlers that are cropping up right now. And they have their spots and they deserve it because they're really good. But you have to make sure that you keep your spot because, as you mentioned, there's always someone that's going to be there to take it, right? So it's this like this insane amount of pressure where you always have to keep going somehow and pretty much find ways to be innovative in that sense, to push yourself, to propel yourself to the top and to stay there. Essentially, it's a lot of pressure for sure.
Well, I like how you mentioned innovative because I mean, if you think about it, you were trained by one of the most innovative minds of pro wrestling in a Speedball Mike Bailey, but also
Yes.
now you're going for 2 months to go train with another innovative mind in Amasha Stamovich, and I'm sure Lou Fisto has given you some pointers through your journey as well. And I want to actually bring something to you. I don't know if you've known this. So in 2023, you had about 38 matches. 2022, when you debuted, you had two because you debuted in October, so the year was pretty much over. But
Yeah.
2023, you had 38 matches. Last year, you had 63 matches. That's
Yeah. So
a jump.
actually, so in my first year, I had like I don't know how much I had, but I probably had closer to 50 in my first year.
Okay.
It's just not everything was registered.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, like maybe a bit shy of 50. And then this year, actually, I had 97 matches.
See, there you go. Internet,
So
right? There's
yeah,
some stuff's not even registered, but you're talking about your third, like you're literally your second full year in, and you doubled your total
yeah.
already. And I'm sure you're going to exceed that total in 2025 because, like I said, you are a talent. And I will say this: you are one of the sweetest people that I've ever met. But I've seen you in
Oh,
the ring, and you can play a very mean human being. You can play a very, very mean character. Now, I always love to ask this question because I think it's something so, it's an easy question, but it makes people think. You're so sweet in your day-to-day life. And then when you get in the ring, you can make a newborn baby cry. How do you reach that plateau? How do you go from this to this? How do you flip the switch on? What do you tap into to literally make a kid cry? How do you make it work?
so I mean, it was honestly really weird for me at first because like I pretty much got slotted into the heel position right away. And which makes sense, like the way I dress, my music and everything, right? If you compare me usually to most people I'm wrestling, I look like the darker character, which, it makes sense. But it was weird because when I initially started wrestling, I wanted to be more of a face because when I wrestle, it gives me this like energy and this adrenaline, and I kind of want to. It's almost like if anyone's like listen and they're into metal or whatever it is, and they mosh, that kind of energy when you mosh. That's kind of what I feel when I'm wrestling, right? And it's like I just want to move around and yell at the crowd and get them into it and be like, fuck yeah, that's the feeling I get. So when I was pretty much put into a position to be a heel the whole time, it was super counterintuitive to how I feel when I wrestle. So it was like really uncomfortable for me at first. That IWS match, actually, IWS is one of the few places where I'm a face. Like I barely wrestle as a face, so it's like really weird for me, and I actually feel a bit uncomfortable watching that match because maybe people don't see it, but I see little things where it's like I know it's not as like fine tuned or as crisp as like my heel stuff, right? But yeah, so it took me a while to get comfortable in that role. And especially because as a heel, you're supposed to slow everything down, which is not how I feel when I wrestle. So that was really hard for me too. And I think people said I was always a decent heel, but it was something that it really took practice. And I would really have to like watch other people, other wrestlers to get influence because it's not something that comes to me super naturally. And now it's just, I guess I've done it so much that I've gotten used to it. And now it's like essentially what I do is like, I really try. to be super, super shitty, if we can swear.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Okay, as much as I can to get the baby face over, because I realize sometimes when I'm a heel and I'm wrestling, the crowd sometimes is cheering a bit more for me. So it's like I really have to go over the top and be as slimy as possible and as cheap as possible and as shitty as possible so that they start booing me so they can cheer the other person. So I started really looking at wrestlers and stuff like that to get ideas of different things I can do to essentially elevate the baby face, which is why I'm there, right? That is my role. But when it comes to like the intensity, that's just like, not to get too much into it, but my childhood was a bit messed up and my past was a bit messed up. So there's kind of a lot of like trauma that I've mostly dealt with, but there's still kind of that lingering frustration sometimes. And it comes out when I wrestle, like the yelling and the intensity and the hitting and the movement, it just comes out of me like that. And I think that's why I have such an intensity when I wrestle. It's an easy medium for me to essentially process all of that. But the being shitty, I mean, that's something I really had to learn and get used to. That wasn't supernatural to me. But yeah.
Being a dick was hard for me, but I got it now. I figured it out. I did. I figured it out.
Yeah,
So you know what?
I got it, guys.
She got it. She's got it figured out. You know what? You touched on childhood trauma, and you're speaking to the masses. Somebody who's been
Mm.
therapeutic journey for the last 6 years. Almost checked out personally like 4 years ago. Just was tired, wanted
Oh,
to leave, but luckily my wife and my daughters helped me get through it. So you know what?
yeah.
Your past doesn't define you, and
Mhm.
your past is just an experience that you can use to tap in. So if pro wrestling
Exactly.
started for you, then all the power to you because what didn't kill you then has just made us stronger now. That's the way I look at things.
Exactly. 100%.
So one final thing, one final question before I let you go enjoy the rest of your evening. But when it comes down to the journey and how quick and how hectic this journey is, and you talked about reflection, you talked about having this little bit of time. When you sit back now and you have this time to recuperate and to reflect off the last 2 years, I mean, like I said, close to 50 matches full year one, close to 100 matches full year two. Now we're in year three. You reflect back and you sit back and you just have a glass of wine or maybe a shot of whiskey and you look and you go, damn, I've done a lot of shit in a quick time. Like, is it still seem surreal to you?
It does. I think, and this is something I need to work on, and I find really like wrestling really interesting in that sense. And that's one of the reasons I really like wrestling too, is I find it helps you to realize things about yourself that you might not have otherwise realized in your day-to-day life. And something I've realized, I kind of knew beforehand, but I realized a lot with wrestling is I'm incredibly self-critical. And so, and it's like to the point where it's like it's like nonsensical and it's not realistic. And it's like, I know that mentally, but it's like, I don't feel that in my heart. So when it comes to things like that, like I've done a lot, right? I've done a lot of things and like, it somehow doesn't seem like it's enough. I still feel like I need to push myself more and I need to do more. And it's like, I'm always grateful and appreciative of the opportunities I've been given, but it's like, for me internally, it's not enough. It's not good enough and I need to do more. And it's like, okay, I need to like figure out a way to balance that, I realized, because it's something that's not sustainable in an industry like wrestling. Because I'm very much a completionist when it comes to like, my studies, for example, I give it like 100% and I do well, but at the end of a term, I get an A, right? There's something that's there and it's done. Okay, I did it. Now I can move on to the next thing. What I realized over the past few months is that there's never an end in wrestling, right? So to have that mindset, it's not sustainable over the long term because there is no end. So and everything is subjective, right? Like, yes, I'm doing all these things and, it's proof that I'm doing well because I'm getting these bookings and whatever. But it's still kind of a variable, subjective industry, right? Someone will be like, yeah, you're awesome. And another person will be like, nah, you suck, right? It's not as definitive as getting like an A after an exam. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't have that concrete proof in front of me being like, yeah, you did a good job. So it's something I need to tell myself and realize and be like, damn, okay, I've done a lot. And I should be proud of that, Like I really need to work on being proud of myself for what I've done. And I am sometimes, but I need to work on it more. Um, Yeah, I guess that's my answer.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's a great way to end what I would perceive to be the first of many conversations, because you are now officially a member of the Straight Talk family. So anytime you want to come back on, would love to have you. But I will say this, and you know what? I have that same thing too. It's almost like
Mhm.
imposter syndrome. It's like you don't
Yes.
really feel like you believe here. You don't really feel like you belong here. Sorry. So I'm here to tell
Yeah.
you that at least on my show, the only opinion that matters is mine. And I'm going to tell you, you don't suck. The future is very bright for you. And I think you killed it, and you're going to continue to prove the naysayers wrong. And you know what I've had to realize is I'm not one for haters. I don't like haters. I don't like people that think I've been called everything. I've been called a fatter version of Bubba Ray Dudley. I've been told my voice is weird. I've been called all kinds of shit on the internet. I used to take it personally, but now
Oh,
I'm like to the point where you know what? If I'm not pissing somebody off, then I'm not doing great things. So if you want to hate me, hate me,
true.
because fat Bubba Ray Dudley gets to talk to pro wrestlers all the time. So kiss my ass. That's the straight goods. So if you have the haters, that's the motivation to let you know that you deserve to be there and your spot
Mhm.
was earned. So keep shining, my dear, because I think you are fantastic. And I can't
Thank
wait to get
you.
you back on the show in a year from now and see how much more your star has risen. So before I let you go, if you want to shout out your socials so people can keep track on the journey that is Katrina Creed.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm sorry, you've gone through that, but I think we both, I'm starting to realize it now. It's like, there's going to be that discourse always. You just have to find a way to power through, right? So I'm glad you were able to find that. I'm finding my footing when it comes to that too, but thank you for that. So yeah, my socials, on Twitter, it's Katrina with a K and Creed with a C. And my Instagram is cat with a K dot Creed with a C. And that's where you can find me.
Guys, check it out. The socials are pretty cool. She posts a lot of great highlights and stuff like that. And you're going to want to follow this girl because let me tell you, I see an ID in the future. That's all I'm going to say. Whatever you want to, whatever you want to say the ID is, yes, there's 3 letters that are in front of it. But yes, I see an ID in the future, 150%. As always, guys, that's it for this one. Your host, your boy, George McKay. Peace, love, and wrestling. We'll see you next week.
Yo, we just people from the north side. Once the Timmy's hit the shore fine. Winter ready on the full ties. Heavy traffic during 4-5. Gotta hustle on your own time. Color people every port side. We just people from the north side.